I was hooked immediately. Hi my beautiful stars, I hope that you're doing so well today. Happy New Year. I hope that it's been treating you well so far. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a 2021 book wrap up, and I'm going to talk about the books that I read this year and then if I would reread them or if I would recommend them to you. So let's just get into it. This year, or like now speaking in past tense, last year, hadn't read for pleasure in a long time. I'd pick up a book occasionally, but it was usually one that I've already read before, so I knew that I was gonna like it. I didn't really try anything new, and anytime I did, I just wouldn't really get into it, so I just didn't read a lot, and I wish I did because I think it would have helped with my anxiety a lot, and I've seen such a difference in how I am like mentally now that I read more. I love reading. I found my passion for it again, and I'm really grateful that 2021 brought me back to that. I love reading so much, and it brought so much joy to me this year. The book that did it all for me was Goodbye Days, and I love this book. I honestly was going to get all of the books and like show them to you one by one, but I honestly, you know what, I should do that. Okay, what I'm going to do is share who the author is, obviously, and then I'll pop it up on the screen. I was going to say that I was going to grab all the books, but some of them I did pass along to little free libraries. I just organized my bookshelf and I don't know where all the books are that I have read this year because I just like put them away and I get into like a little bit of a frenzy. But let's just start off with Goodbye Days by Jeff Sentner. This book I read in like a day and a half. I was hooked immediately. I actually found this at the Dollar Tree, which I've done some Dollar Tree book hauls on my channel before if you're interested in that. Recently I went back to the Dollar Tree. I always check their book section. It was dry as of recent, but I just went like 2 days ago and I bought so many books because they must have just hit the mother load of just overstock or something, because they have so many good books right now, at least in the ones that I've been to. Bought a bunch of books, and for $1.25, that's a pretty good deal, especially if you like to read a lot and you go through books super quickly. I think the Dollar Tree is a good place to check out. But yeah, Goodbye Days. Jeff Sentner also wrote The Serpent King. I have not read that book, but I've heard that it's really popular, and this book just really got me emotionally. It's about this friend that lost his 3 best friends to a texting and driving car accident that people think he caused because he was the one that sent the text, knowing that his friend would text him back that was driving. And this is not a spoiler. It says this, like literally if you go look up the summary of the book or whatever, it says this. But really sad. And Goodbye Days, he offers the people that lost their sons or their grandson to a goodbye day in remembrance of their friend and the family member that they lost. And he's able to hear stories from the family members and understand his friend from another point of view. It's really beautifully written. I love this book so much, and I will definitely reread it. It has a 4.1 out of 5 on Goodreads, so I feel like that's pretty good. I just love this book, so if you want something that might make you laugh a little bit, might make you cry, honestly 5 out of 5. I will reread it again, and I really recommend it. The next book I read was Something Borrowed by Emily Giffin or Giffin, but I found this book and Something Blue, which are companion books, at a garage sale, and I posted them on my Snapchat story, and some people were like, oh my gosh, I love this book, I love this movie, and I was like, it's a movie? And I actually watched it on Netflix a couple months ago because it was on Netflix for a little bit. I don't know if it's still on there or not. This book was actually the first book in a long time that made me so mad at the characters. I didn't like anybody in this book besides one person, and of course I can't remember their name right now. So hard to like anybody. The good thing about Emily's writing is that she made you want to like somebody, she made you want to root for somebody, but then you catch yourself and you're like, I still don't like anybody. The ending was really honestly a surprise. I did not expect that ending. If you've read that book, you might understand where I'm coming from. Do really recommend it. I would rate it like a 3.5 out of 5 just because I was so mad at all the characters. They were really not likable in my opinion, just because of their actions, because basically Rachel and Darcy have been childhood best friends, and Rachel wakes up the next morning after her birthday to Darcy's fiance laying naked beside her, Dex. It starts this like cheating spiral. I'm just like, what the heck? This book I did like. It kept me hooked because of Emily's writing. The book after that I read was Royals by Rachel Hawkins, and I just found out that Rachel Hawkins also goes by Erin Sterling, who wrote The Ex-Hex. So if you have read that book, you might like this one. This one I also found at the Dollar Tree. I was really surprised, and honestly the synopsis of the book sounded so intriguing. That's why I bought it. That's why I buy most books, honestly, and also because the covers sometimes are really pretty and I'm like, oh wait, is that gonna be a good book or no? I ended up really liking this. It took me a little bit to get into it. It just wasn't like a wow factor for me, but then as I kept going, I really got into it, and the ending is super cute, super like rom-com-y, and I just loved it a lot. So I definitely recommend this book. I rated it like a 4 out of 5. I passed this along to Little Free Library, but if I ever came across it again, I'd maybe reread it. After this I read The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. This was also a book that I didn't know was a book before, you know, after being made into a movie. Like, I had no idea. So of course I had to buy it, and this book got me hooked kind of right away. It was honestly the longest book I've read in a long time. It's a little over 400 pages. Just didn't like vibe with it as I kept reading, but I stuck through with it. There was a lot of like, I don't know how to describe it. It was different from the movie. I try not to compare too much when it comes to that while I'm reading a book that maybe I've seen the movie before, but it was hard not to do that with this because Andy I thought was so much different in the book than she was in the movie. And of course actors can portray characters so differently, and I think Anne Hathaway did a great job with Andy, but it was just hard to connect to the story. Ended up ending good, and I liked it a lot, and I finished it. I brought it with me to Hawaii, and so I was like reading it on the beach and stuff, and I really got into it. So I rate this like a 3 or a 4 out of 5. I don't think I'll ever reread it. I did pass it along to a Little Free Library. The next book I read was Dumplin, and I love this book. I rate it a 5 out of 5. I will definitely reread it. This is also a movie adaptation. Had me hooked immediately. The story is just so good. I love it. It's based in Texas, and there's this Miss Little Teen Blue Bonnet pageant that Dumplin, aka Willow Dean's mom, won in like the 90s. Willow Dean is plus size, and so she deals with a lot of not very nice people. She also deals with the nickname that her mom gave her, which is Dumplin, and she just, it has a negative connotation to it. She doesn't like it, and her Aunt Lucy actually passed away, who was like her best friend, who was also plus size, and just showed her that like life is more than just what people say you are, and gave her the love of Dolly Parton and falling in love with her music. And I don't know how to really describe this book, but I loved it a lot, and there was just so many good parts that I just can't even elaborate more because it was just so good. And then I wanted to keep reading Julie Murphy's books, so I got the companion book to Dumplin called Puddin', and this book is so adorable. I loved it so much. It stars Millie Mitchellchuck and Callie Reyes, who are sub-characters in Dumplin. I really liked how it focused on their friendship, and it's really something that you wouldn't expect to happen, which I liked. There was some drama at the end. It ended very nicely. It was super cute. I rate both of them like 5 out of 5, and I'll probably reread them over and over again. After that, I read something completely different that I never really read, which is called My Best Friend's Exorcism. This is by Grady Hendrix. I have never read a thriller book before or anything like super crazy like this, and it's set in I think like the late 80s, early 90s. Basically, it's kind of like a movie but in book form. I have never read a book that has been so close to a movie plot in my life. It just plays out so much like a movie, and it's funny because the exterior of the book looks like a VHS from like Blockbuster or something, so I really like that. The book was really well written. A lot of the scenes were crazy, just was portrayed really well. As someone that loves watching like thriller and horror movies, this book is for the horror slash thriller lover, and I bought this book because of Book Talk, and I found it on Mercari, so I'm really grateful that I read it. It kind of opened my mind to this whole other world, and I found a lot of other Grady Hendrix's books, as well as some Stephen King books that I hopefully will eventually get to reading. But yeah, it's something way different from what I typically read. After this, I read Grace After Henry, which is kind of a twist on what I just read. This was more of like a rom-com, and I forgot to look this one up, so I can't remember who this was written by, but it'll be on the screen. And this book, I'll rate it like a 3 out of 5. It was like kind of like a Groundhog Day effect, not at all like the movie or anything like that, but it just seemed like the writer kept writing the same days over and over again, and it just wasn't like super interesting. But the end, last couple of chapters towards the end, took a twist that I was not expecting, and I really ended up liking it because of that. I felt like there was like some unfinished business, I guess, with it. in my opinion, but it still was a good read, and I'd rate this, like I said, a 3 out of 5. I gave this away to a little free library, and I probably won't reread it, but it was okay. It wasn't like my favorite. After this, I read the first Harry Potter book, which I have never read the Harry Potter series before. You guys caught me. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I was trying to thrift all of them. I love the movies so much. My dad and I saw them in theaters while I was growing up, and I've been to the Harry Potter worlds at Universal Studios in Orlando a couple of times, and I just love how magical it is, and I love the stories and the characters, so I knew that I was going to really enjoy the books when I got around to reading them. And it was funny because I only owned like the 5th and the 3rd book, so it was really random, and I ended up finding all of them at the thrift store or at like used bookstores, which was really cool. I love supporting smaller bookstores, and that was great to find them used. I've read the first and the second one, so spoiler, but I didn't read them back to back or anything. I read the first book after Grace After Henry, and then my friends and I were like, should we just read them together and kind of have our own little book club? So then we started the second book together. Both of these 5 out of 5. I'll probably reread these books over and over and over again. I love them so much. If you have not given them a chance, I really recommend it, and you'll love them. After this, I kind of wanted like a palette cleanser, so I went for Angus Thongs in Full Frontal Stalking by Louise Renison, and I didn't know that this movie was a book. It was another one. I was like, what? So I love the movie. It's one of my favorite teen ones that I watched when I was like 13 with my best friend Gabby at our house. She's like, you're gonna love this movie, and guess what? I did. Never seen this movie. I really recommend it. It was like a Nickelodeon kind of movie, and I loved it. It's based in the UK, and so it's not to love already, but the book is perfect. It's kind of like if you've ever read Bridget Jones's Diary. It reads a lot like that, but it's for like younger teens, maybe like late kids, tween vibe. Really quick read. I read it in like 2 days, and I loved it. It's like reading somebody's diary, and she's so funny, so I liked it a lot. Probably like 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. I'll reread them again, and I have most of the collection, so I'll probably just keep reading the series as I see fit. After this, I read Confessions of a Shopaholic by Sophie Concilla, and this is also a movie. What a shocker. And the movie is a little bit different from the book because the book takes place in the UK, whereas the movie takes place in New York, and even though the characters have the same names and stuff like that, they're not the same, and I like that because the book just kind of added a little bit of flavor, and it kept me hooked even during like the lower parts of the book where it wasn't as interesting. I will probably not reread this book. I ended up giving it away to a little free library, but I do rate it like a 4 out of 5. I did really like it, and I read it within like I think a week's time. I just took my time with it, and I enjoyed it a lot. So along the lines of that, I ended up reading The 12 Dates of Christmas, which I did do a book review on, and this is by Jenny Bayliss. I rated it like a 4 out of 5. It's really cute. It's a seasonal holiday read. It's based around Christmas, so I really wanted to read it. I got it at the thrift store, and I was really excited. I didn't know that it was like a newer release. I think it's like a year or 2 old, and it was really cute. I did like it, but there were some parts that I didn't always like, which, you know, I feel like sometimes that comes with books as you read them. It was a cute book. If you want to know more about how I felt about it, you can watch my book review. Moved on with the seasonal reads to A Christmas Blizzard. He's from Minnesota, and I thrifted it, and it sounds a lot like A Christmas Carol. It was a lot different from books that I typically read. It wasn't as interesting as I thought. It was supposed to be kind of like A Christmas Carol, but it wasn't, and he's, I guess, a comedian writer more than anything, and so I could see that in some of his parts that he was writing in the book, but it was kind of a dark comedy, and I wasn't expecting that. So I did get through it. It was only like 200 pages, so it was a really quick read. I would never reread it again. No offense to the author, it was just like not something that I typically go for, so I just didn't end up liking it as much as I thought I would. What's really cool is I opened up the book and it's a signed copy, so I was like, oh my gosh. But I think I'll probably pass it along and see if somebody else will like it. What I love, it is a local author, and I'm really glad that I read it, and I really wanted to get into another book before the end of 2021, and I read The Love Hypothesis by Alia Hazelwood, and this book is actually really good. I feel like it was overhyped on Book Talk, just on TikTok in general. People were like, oh my gosh, you need to read this book. So I bought it brand new at a bookstore, and I do like it. It was good. I would rate it like a 4 out of 5. I don't know if I'll reread it. There were some parts that I was kind of like, nah, this is kind of boring, but there were parts that towards the end of the book get really spicy. So if you like reading spicy content, take that with what you will. It is spicy, and it was my first book that was spicy. I did like it. It was different. My other friend read it in like a day, and I read it in like a couple of days. I just took it slow. I wasn't super interested, like I said, but as I kept reading it got way better. Kind of a slow burn vibe to it. I don't know, maybe I will reread it, maybe I won't, but like a 4 out of 5. If you ever come across it at like a used bookstore or something, I would say pick it up, or at the library, but I wouldn't say like go out and buy it unless if you really want to. It was still good, worth the read, and that was all that I read in 2021. I want to keep saying 2020, I don't know why, but I was really grateful for all the books that I read. I liked them all, and I not finished like 2 books because they just weren't that good, and I can talk about that later if you want. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you read down below. Maybe you read something like me, and that's cool. We're book twins. But I'll see you in my next video. Until then, shine bright. Bye!